The Philosophy of Education and the Curriculum of 1986. 2000. I'm Lady B. Palacio, Maid Mathematics. So I will start with the introduction. The period 1986 to 2000 marked a significant shift in Philippine education. Following the 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution, there was a renewed emphasis on democracy, human rights, nationalism, and social justice in national development, including education. This era saw multiple educational reforms aimed at aligning with a new democratic vision. The period from 1986 to 2000 brought major changes to Philippine education. After the 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution, the country returned to democracy, and this greatly influenced the direction of national development, including the education system. During this time, there was a strong focus on promoting democracy, human rights, nationalism, and social justice through education. Reforms were made to ensure that schools would not only teach academic subjects, but also help students become responsible, informed, and active citizens. New laws and programs were introduced to provide free public education, improve access for poor and marginalized communities, and include lessons that highlight Philippine history, culture, values, and critical thinking. So the government also involved local communities more in decision-making about education. Here are the philosophical orientation of education. The first one is democratic philosophy, rooted in the ideals of freedom, participation, and equality. Encourage critical thinking, active citizenship, and learner-centered education. Emphasis on inclusive and participatory governance in schools. Democratic philosophy in education is based on principles of freedom, equality, and participation. It promotes the idea that students are not just passive receivers of information but active participants in their own learning. This philosophy encourages critical thinking, where learners are taught to ask questions, analyze issues, and form their own opinions, and also promote active citizenship, meaning students are prepared to responsible members of society who understand their rights and duties. So in schools, learner-centered education became more common, focusing on the needs, interests, and abilities of each student. At the same time, school governance became more inclusive and participatory, involving teachers, parents, and even students in the decision-making process. So example here, in classroom discussion about current events, students are allowed to share their personal views respectfully even if they differ from others. Number 2, nationalistic humanistic philosophy. Education aims to develop love for country, cultural identity, and appreciation of Filipino heritage. Promoted Filipino as a medium of instructions in Filipino values. Human development was central. Learners were seen as holistic, being with rights and responsibilities. So the first one is the love for country, cultural identity, and heritage. Education was used to promote national pride and the deeper appreciation of Filipino culture and history. Example, students study the lives of national heroes, Philippine history and regional costumes and traditions. School events celebrate local festivals and indigenous cultures. Number 2, we have here the promotion of Filipino languages and values. Filipino was used as a medium of instructions, especially in the basic education. Strengthening national identity, and unity. Filipino values were also embedded in learning. Example, subjects like Panlipunan and education sa pagpapakatao are taught in Filipino. Students are taught values like bayanihan, kumiti, utang na loob, gratitude, and pagkipagkapwa-tao. So that's it. And then number 3 is the holistic human development. Students are seen just as learners, but as a whole person with emotional, moral, and social, intellectual needs, the rights of responsibilities. Number 3, constructivism. Learners were seen as active participants in constructing their own knowledge, encourage real-life learning, problem-solving, and learner experiences as the key educational tools. Examples here in constructivism is a learner philosophy that views students as active participants in their own learning process. Instead of just receiving information from the teacher, learners are encouraged to construct their own understanding through experiences, discovery, and interaction. So we have here the active learning. Students are not passive listeners. They explore questions and experiment to learn. Example here, instead of memorizing formulas, students solve real-world problems like budgeting for meal plan and measuring ingredients in a recipe. Number 2, we have here real-life learning. Lessons are connected to real-life situations, making learning more meaningful and practical. And number 3, that's what we call is problem solving and experience-based learning. Learning is driven by asking questions, solving problems, and reflecting on experiences. Example, in a history class, students are asked role play as historical figures and debate key issue, helping understanding the past through simulation. Number 3, motives behind educational reforms. So number 1 here is rebuilding democracy. So after martial law, education was reoriented to support democratic ideals and freedom of thought. So when we say rebuilding democracy, after the martial law period in the Philippines in 1972 to 1986, the education system needed to be reformed to move away from the authoritarian control and toward democratic values. During martial law, freedom of speech and thought were limited, and education was often used to promote state propaganda. Following the 1986 People Power Revolution, education was reoriented to promote freedom of thought, critical thinking, and civic responsibility. The goal was to help students become informed, active citizens who could contribute to a free and democratic society. So we have education emphasize freedom of expression, respect for human rights, understanding of democracy processes, encouragement of students' voice and participation. So example here in civics and social studies classes, students were encouraged to discuss current national issues, express their opinions, and even organize students' councils. Instead of just memorizing facts, they were taught to analyze government actions, understand the Constitution, and participate in mock elections. So this helped them experience how democracy works in real life. Social justice and equity. Expanding access to basic education, especially for marginalized communities. When we say social justice and equity, in education focuses on ensuring fair and equal access to equality education for all, especially for those who are disadvantaged or marginalized, such as the poor, indigenous peoples, children in remote areas, and learners with disabilities. So the goal in remote barriers to education and provide supports so that every learner, regardless of background or circumstance, has the opportunity to succeed. The principle promotes inclusion, fairness, and respect for diversity in education system. It reflects the belief that education is right, not privilege, and that no one should be left behind due to the poverty, gender, in ethnicity, disability, or location. For example, here, the ALS, when we say alternative learning system, in the Philippines, in the concrete example of promoting social justice and equity, ALS provides out-of-school youth, working adults, and learners in far-flung areas with access to basic education through flexible community-based programs. Another example, in the pre-implemented school feeding program, scholarship, and free public education, like the Free Public Secondary Education Act of 1988, which helped reduce dropout rates among poor students. So in number 3, global competitiveness. So preparing Filipino learners for participation in globalized world. Focus on science, technology, and English proficiency. So in global competitiveness in education refers to the goal of equipping Filipino learners with the knowledge, skills, and attitudes they need to succeed and participate effectively in globalized world. As a globalization connects countries through trade, communication, and technology, education must prepare students to meet international standards. This philosophy emphasizes, number 1, is proficiency in English, to communicate globally and access international opportunities through a strong foundation in science and technology, to innovate, solve problems, and adapt the global developments. And the last is 21st thinking skills such as digital literacy, critical thinking, collaboration, and adaptability. So here we go, the example. So number 1 here is use English as a medium of instructions. Many subjects, especially science and math, are taught in English to build fluency and prepare students for a national exam for job markets. Number 2, the STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. Schools implement robotics, coding, and ICT, information and communications technology programs to build technological skills. Number 3, international benchmarking and testing. Students are trained to take international assessment like PISA, Program for International Students Assessment, to measure how Filipino learners compare with the students around the world. In number 4, partnership with the global institutions, schools, and universities partner with international organization offer exchange programs and online courses to expose learners to global standards. In number 4 is moral recovery. Is promotion of values education in response to perceived moral decline. So when we say moral recovery in education refers to the deliberate effort to rebuild the moral and ethical values of Filipino learners, especially in response to issues like corruption, dishonesty, violence, and lack of discipline in society after the political and social challenges during and after martial law. There was a growing concern that moral foundation of the youth was weakening. As a result, education was used as tool to promote positive Filipino values, informs ethical behavior, and social responsibility. So encourage students to become morally upright and value-driven citizens. This was supported by the government through the Moral Recovery Program, initiated in the 1990s, aiming to restore core values like honesty, integrity, discipline, and love of country. For example, here, values of education classes. The subject education of pagkatao (ECP) was included in the curriculum to teach values like respect, responsibility, honesty, and empathy. Number 2 is character building activities. Schools hold activities such as honesty campaigns, anti-bullying seminars, and outreach program to develop sense of compassion and moral duty. Number 3, integration of values in other subjects. Teachers include values-based in discussion subjects like literature. Example here is starts with moral lesson or history. Example like highlighting the integrity of the Filipino heroes. Number 4, recognition of good behavior. Schools implement reward system that recognize students for good conduct, leadership, of act of kindness. So let's proceed to curriculum developments and reforms. So number 1 is 1987 Philippine Constitution. So Article 14 emphasized the right to quality education for all, promoted love of country, human rights, social consciousness, and scientific and technological knowledge. So when we say Article 14, of 1987 Philippine Constitution focuses on education, affirming that all Filipinos have the right to quality education at all levels, from basic to higher education. It obligates the students to protect and promote this right, making education accessible to improve everyone, especially the underprivileged. So in addition to academic development, Article 14 also emphasizes that education should promote love of country, instill respect for human rights, encourage social responsibility and national identity, advance scientific and technological knowledge to support national development and global competitiveness. It lays the foundation for the education system that shapes not only skilled individuals but also social aware, ethical, and patriotic citizens. Example here, one clear example of Article 14 in action is the introduction of education for pagkatao in the K-12 curriculum, which teaches values like patriotism, respect for others, and civic responsibility. So other example is the Department of Education use of Philippine history and culture in the curriculum to promote national identity, as well as emphasis of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So subject to education, sport, teach, driving future. Number 2, we have Philippine Education Sector Study. So 1998. So conducted with the World Bank and ADB, identify the need to improve learning outcomes, teacher quality, and resource allocation. So in Philippine Education Sector Studies was a major research initiative conducted in 1998 by the Philippine government in partnership with the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. So the purpose of the study was to assess the state of the Philippine education system and provide recommendation for its improvement. PS was the response to growing concerns about the quality of education, especially after comparing the Philippines with other countries in the region. So we have here the key findings and focus areas. Low learning outcomes. Many students were not meeting the expected levels in reading, math, and science. Poor teacher quality. There was a need to improve teacher training, preparation, and teaching strategies. Example, as a result of PSS findings, the government implemented reforms such as teacher training programs to improve classroom instruction and subject mastery, curriculum revision to focus more on core competency, increase investment in public schools, particularly in rural or underserved areas, to provide learning materials and improve school infrastructure. In number 4, we have curriculum developments and reforms. So in number 3, implementation of the 1989 DEX Values Education Framework. So introduce values education as a separate learning area in the curriculum, aim to instill moral integrity, nationalism, and personal discipline. So we have here implementation of 1989 DEX Values Education Framework. So we have here 1989 in the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports. Now DepEd introduced was the Values Education Framework to respond to growing concerns about the moral and ethical development of Filipino students. This framework led to the formal inclusion of the values education as a separate subject in the basic education curriculum starting from elementary up to high school. So instead of moral integrity, teaching students the importance of honesty, respect, responsibility, and ethical behavior, promote nationalism, developing love of the country, pride of the Philippine identity, and civic responsibility. And then develop personal discipline, helping learners manage their actions, emotions, choices, and choices in daily life. Number four, we have the science and technology education. Focus on STEM to keep up with the Asian neighbors and global standards. Enhance science and math programs in public high schools. So why focus on STEM? STEM subjects develop critical thinking, problem solving, and innovation skills. Many future jobs will require knowledge in science, technology, and math. Asian countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and Vietnam are heavily investing in STEM education to prepare their students for the digital and global economy. Number two, what does the enhanced science and math programs mean? It means improving the curriculum, upgrading facilities, training teachers, and providing more resources to students. It can also include the integrating the ICT, information and communication technology, into learning. For example, here, number one is special science classes in public high school. So we have here these classes have a more advanced curriculum in science and math. So students do experiments, research projects, and sometimes even robotics or coding. Number two, STEM senior high schools tracks. Many schools, or rather, offer a STEM strands in the senior high school. Students in the take subject like physics, biology, chemistry, calculus, and computer science. Number three, robotics competitions and science fair. Public high school now often encourage students to join local and national robotics in science competitions, sample Asian sciences, and math olympiads. This builds creativity, teamwork, and real-life application of STEM concepts. So, in number four, classroom is now smart classroom and digital tools. Some public schools are now using smart boards, tablets, or online platform for learning STEMs. For example, using simulations in physics to demonstrate concepts like force and motion. And number five, bilingual education policy, BAP. Continued implementation, Filipino use in social studies, and values English for science and math. Aim to develop proficiency in both languages for cognitive and cultural development. So we have here the bilingual education policy. In the Philippines, aim to develop students who are proficient in both Filipino and English. This is just about language proficiency. It also supports cognitive growth, academic success, and cultural identity. So we have here the continued implementation. The policy has been placed in since 1974 and is still being implemented today. It ensures that students learn both English and Filipino by using them to mediums and sections and different subjects. So in number two, language and allocation by subject, Filipino is used to teach social studies, Araling Panlipunan, and Bias education. These subjects help students understand Filipino history, society, and moral values. So using Filipino strengthens national identity and cultural connections. So in number three, we have goals of the policy. Promote bilingual proficiency so students can think and communicate effectively in both languages. Enhance cognitive development by allowing students to process, express ideas in multi-languages. So preserve and promote Filipino culture and heritage while also preparing students for globalized world. For example, here number one is classroom scenario. So in a grade 7 classroom, Araling Panlipunan is taught at Filipino. Students learn about the Philippine Revolution using Philippine terms in historical context. So we have here the science taught in English. So where students study cells, ecosystems, or chemical reaction using international scientific vocabulary. Number two, so textbook and teaching materials. So textbooks are written in the language assigned to the Filipino. Filipino for values, social studies, English for the math and science. Students are both exposed into academic languages, in both Filipino and English, helping them develop academic literacy. And number three, national achievement test, standardized test in the Philippines following the same languages allocation. Science and math questions are in English. Saring palipunan and values are in the Filipino. This reinforces the use of English language in a specific academic context. Now we have here the implication of Philippine educations. Number one is curriculum reorientation. More integrated and learning-centered approaches were adopted, greater inclusion of values education, civic education, and critical thinking skills. So we have here number one, curriculum reorientation. So when we say curriculum orientation means changing and improving the way students are taught so that learning is more relevant, engaging, and meaningful instead of focusing only on memorization. Schools now aim to help students become active thinkers, responsible citizens, and morally grounded individuals. So we have been more integrated in learning-centered approaches. Lessons are now designed to connect different subjects and real-life situations. So the learning-centered approaches means students are more active in learning process, asking questions, doing hands-on activities, solving problems, and working in groups. So we have number two, greater inclusion of values education, civic education, and critical thinking. These are now emphasized across different subjects, not just taught separately. Students are encouraged to reflect on moral values, understand their role as citizens, and analyze issues using reason and evidence. So we have here this shapes aims to prepare students not just for jobs but for also life of responsible ethical members of society. For example, here in the integrated lesson example, a grade 6 project might combine science, climate change, math, data collection, and graphing, values in education, environmental responsibility. This helps students see how subjects are connected and how they apply to real life issues. Next is civic students and social studies. So students learn about the Philippine Constitution, citizens' rights and duties, and how to participate in democratic process like voting or community involvement. Number three, values integration in all subjects. So in English, students might read stories that teach respect, honesty, or compassion in education. So in critical thinking activities, debates, research projects, and problem solving are now part of the lessons. And number two is equity in education. Policies were enacted to support educational access for indigenous people, women, and the poor. So equity in education means giving everyone a fair chance to succeed, especially those who have been disadvantaged or marginalized. Unlike equality, where everyone gets the same thing, equity gives people what they need based on the specific situation, such as the poverty, gender, or cultural background. So here the purpose of equity policies to ensure that all learners, regardless of their background, have access to quality education. So, for example, this includes indigenous peoples, women, and poor and underprivileged communities who may face barriers such as lack of schools, discrimination, or poverty. Number two is the government initiatives. The Philippine government, through the Department of Education, DepEd, and other agencies, is introduced some programs to bridge education gaps. These policies aim to remove obstacles, example distance, cost, discrimination, and provide targeting support. For example, here, the Alumad community in Mindanao receive education in their own language with the lessons based in their environment and culture. And number two, for example, for women and girls, gender and development policy education. Example, encouraging girls to join robotics labs or science by breaking the stereotype that tech and science are for boys. Number three, we have for the poor, Pantawid Pamilya Pilipino Program for Peace. Ito yung sabi nilang purpose. Example, a low-income family receive cash support as long as they should regularly attend school and receive health check-ups. So example here, malnourished grade 2 student in the rural schools receives daily lunch to improve concentration and learning. The ALS program, a teenage mother who drop out of school can still complete the high school through ALS. So in number 3, global and national balance. So the curriculum tried to balance national identity with global competitiveness. So in global and national balance, this principle means the curriculum is designed to help students become globally competitive while also preserving and sustaining their national identity as Filipinos. So we have here the curriculum includes Filipino language, history, culture, and values. Students are taught to appreciate their heritage, tradition, and the struggles of the Filipino people. This helps the national pride and patriotism. So we have here the examples: English and Filipino subjects. Students learn Filipino to understand literature, express national values, and stay connected to local identity. So they also study English, which is used in global communication, science, and business. So Aralin Panlipunan, students can learn Philippine history, government, and Aralin Panlipunan. So number 3, encouraging 21st century skills, activity subjects, and ICT problem solving, digital skills, and innovation. The example here, a group of project in science encourage students to gain a sustainable. So here are the challenges. Despite reforms, problems remained: poor facilities, underpaid teachers, and learning disparities. Rapid reforms outpace actual implementation capacity in many schools. So many public schools still lack of classroom, chairs, toilets, libraries, laboratories, internet access, overcrowded classroom, and broken schools buildings make it hard for students to learn effectively. So we have the underpaid and overworked teachers. Teachers often receive low salaries compared to their workload. They're also expected to handle large class sizes, to do administrative work, and adapt to the new teaching methods, often without teaching training. Number 3, learning disparities. This argue the gaps between the two urbans of the families versus private schools. So here are the conclusions. From 1986 to 2000, the Philippines education system underwent significant philosophical and instructional transformation. The orientation became more democratic, nationalistic, and learning-centered, with the emphasis on the values formation, critical. So we have critical thinking and technology advancement. While many of these reforms laid solid foundation, challenges and implementation and equity of persisted. So here are the references and my report. 1987 Philippine Institution, Department of Education, DEX, Policy and Philippine Education Sector, UNESCO Education Reports, Republic Act 778 for Teacher Training and Development Act. So here are the first topic. So once again, here are my first topic of my report. So I will continue the next topic.